Now I can just imagine newcomers to chess, or young players, or even improvers, asking the question, well, where do we begin our study of the endgame? Well, I say you can do a lot worse than to start your investigations by looking at rook endgames. Basic rook endgames to begin with, and then going on to look at rook endgames within the context of a whole game. And that is what my next game is going to demonstrate. This is an all-grandmaster clash from the Vikings A tournament in 2013, which is one of the strongest events on the whole chess annual calendar. It's a game between the Indian grandmaster Hari Krishna, playing white, and Giri from Holland, playing with the black pieces. So white played e4, and black played a variation of the French defence known as the Rubinstein variation, after the great Akiba Rubinstein, one of the finest players of the early 20th century. Knight d7 is positionally well motivated. Black's planning to bring the knight on g8 out to f6, knocking out white's centrally placed knight. It's a very good idea. The only trouble is, in this variation, black can often end up with a passive position, which is rather sterile. And although this is a good line for black to play against a very aggressive opponent, somebody who's going to try and take you apart, because it's not possible to take the black position apart, against somebody who's patient and just plays for a small edge out of the opening, I wonder whether it's the best choice. And Hari Krishna replies with a quiet and rather underestimated move, g3. White's normal continuations here are bishop d3 and bishop g5, both of which I would say are as natural as they come. g3, well, it's just a quiet move, and black decides to respond to it by playing b6. Both players fianchetto their bishop, white castles, and now black plays his bishop to d6. So white is not aiming for too much out of this opening, just a nice patient build-up and a gradual acquisition in the centre. This is the way strong players play. They don't try and smash their opponents flat, because they know it's not possible. They're playing really strong opponents all the time. They're just trying to build up a slight edge, something that they can work with. And c4 is just such a move, increasing white's control of the centre, and in particular the d5 square. So black plays queen e7, and now another slightly surprising move by white, knight to e5, inviting exchanges. I said that often black gets a sterile position in this variation. Well, I think Hari Krishna is trying to create just such a position where only he has winning chances. And I think black correctly trades in this position. He takes off the bishop, he takes off the knight, he then plays rook fd8, queen e2, and then he doubles rooks in the d file. That's what they do in this position. Black is trying to equalise. But has he equalised? Now, a lot of players would give up the ghost in this position, expecting an imminent draw. Plenty of exchanges. Black doesn't seem to be too cramped. Yet white's position is more comfortable, I think. The black knight isn't going anywhere. It's a bit passive. White's bishop's anchoring the centre, and white can play for a slow advance of his queenside pawns in the middle game. So it's one of those positions where black may be equal, but he hasn't really got very much to play for. Meanwhile, white just plods on, gradually increasing his minute advantage. So ideal for Hari Krishna, really, as he can mount a little bit of pressure against Giri without too much risk. So Giri understands the knight on f6 isn't doing anything. He repositions it on a better square. The knight comes to d6, and afterwards to f5. d5 from white tried to increase the scope of his bishop, and also to create pressure, perhaps along the e file. So black played queen f6. White took on e6. Black recaptured with the pawn. I think black can play for a trick here with queen g6. He's setting up a trick with knight h4 check, but I think that's safely met by queen e4. And black gets just a position where white's got an endgame advantage if the queens come off. Black's got problems with his pawn on e6, and the bishop on f4 is active. So, again, not the type of position you want against a grandmaster, where you've got no counterplay, no winning chances, you've just got a miserable fight for the draw. That's exactly what black is trying to avoid. So he takes on e6 with the pawn. Bishop f4, and now a little trick by black. Knight h4 check, after which there are some more exchanges. Now black probably felt that this was going to bail him out, as he's going to regain his piece, and white's pawn structure on the king side a bit ragged. However, the most important thing here is activity, and white's rook is more active than black's rook. That is the problem from black's perspective. Rook f5 was played. Nevertheless, I think this position should be a draw. King to h7. Well, maybe rook f8. Maybe rook f8 is a move in this position, aiming for the pawn endgame. I'm not quite sure why black didn't play that, and clearly if rook d7, we can offer the pawn endgame again. So maybe takes. Let's see why Giri might not have gone in for this. He obviously feels that the white king is taking up a very strong position in the middle of the board. But there, I think h5, and then white could try to gain a bit of space, but black blocks him. I'm still not quite sure why black didn't go in for this. Let's just run this variation one more time. So white takes on f8, black recaptures, white brings his king up, h5 now, trying to improve that last variation, and now king to d6. Black's threatening to go active on the queen side, so white's got to be a bit careful here. For instance, if white plays b4, we can go a5, and if a3, we can go takes, and b5. This could be dangerous from white's perspective, as c takes b5 is answered by king d5. White's king is less active than black's king, and this could spell difficulty. Going back one more time to the position after king d6, therefore maybe king e4. There are some moves played on the queen side. White tries to run black out of moves and get his king to e5. But even there, king d7. Maybe this was the type of position that Giri was seeing in his mind's eye, and he doesn't like it. But even so, let's just carry this on a bit. Not sure how white continues to mount pressure here if black just goes up and down. So maybe a draw, the king and pawn ending. Just goes to show you these judgment calls in the middle of the game are quite difficult even for grandmasters. So on we go to the rook endgame, where white takes the 7th rank, and black defends himself with rook c5. White hits the pawn, black brings his king out, trying to get active, and now white plays rook e4. So white's got a pawn. It's a double pawn. The show must go on. a5. King g4 was answered by king f6, and f4 was answered by c6. And now white plays an important move, cramping black on the king side, h5. Basically, the white pawn here, the one white pawn, is freezing the two black pawns. And that's a good transaction from white's point of view. One unit freezing two. So black plays b5, that was expected, and white tries to block things off. There's a point to this, as in some positions white can get after this pawn on a5. After rook f5 there came rook d4, and after rook c5 white played h3, trying to run black out of moves. Rook f5, rook e8, rook c5, and now rook a8. Here we see this mechanism in action, and black is about to get into Zugzwang in this position after rook a7. Zugzwang is basically a situation where any legal move leads to a deterioration in the enemy position, and black is in such a situation. He can't move his king because it's tied to the defence of g7. If he takes on c4, we take on a5, and now white has got the pass pawn he needs in order to try and win this. And if black plays g6, as he does in the game, we can take it, king takes, and bring the rook to a8. And this is problematic for black. Now black has two continuations. If he plays h5 check and takes on c4, we take on a5, and now we will see how white tries to win this position. The king comes to f5, rook f8 check, driving the king back, and now a5, whereupon black has to put his rook in behind the passed pawn. The rook defends, king goes to f5, and now white can play a6. This is an important move, as after check, rook a4, a7 wins. The problem with this position from black's perspective, is his king is far too out in the open. The black king needs to be back on either g7 or h7 to draw this position, and he can't make it. So therefore, for instance, something's going to happen like this: king g4 check, king takes h4, queen, rook takes, and the white rook can easily mop up the black pawns. So in the game, going back, black played king f6, white gave a check, driving the king to e6. There was a further check, and now this nice move, rook e5. Very good indeed, forcing rook takes c4, because if the rooks are exchanged, king h5 wins for white. So rook takes c4, rook f5 check, and then rook takes a5. Very good. The black position is a bit less secure after that, with his pawn isolated. King f6, rook a8. Black wins c5, and now we're going to get this sequence again, whereby both sides push their pawns. White goes a7, threatening the check, so Hare Krishna brings his king back to stop. Giri brings his king back to stop rook g8. Then king f3, c3. Hare Krishna brings his king across and nabs the pawn. The problem for black is he can't do anything. His rook can't stray away from the a file. Black's just going to lose that pawn on the c file, and after that it's very easy. White will bring his king back to the king side. So patience was required in that endgame, but very good technique by Hare Krishna.